to the crown jewel of our state. Sioux Falls is one of my favorite places to come and visit. My name is Molly McRoberts. I'm the publisher of the Potter County News in Gettysburg. I'm so glad to have the group here today, and we've got an exciting program planned. Growing up in my little town in South Dakota, my folks were both members of the Sioux Falls community. They grew up here, right here, in the shadow of the cathedral. So coming to Sioux Falls was a big deal. This was always a family vacation. We loved it coming here. But how the downtown has changed just in my lifetime is really remarkable. You'll notice that there are lots of exciting businesses. There are places to eat that are really fun and different. There's beautiful artwork up and down. And Phillips to the Falls. This used to be blocked off. And going through the Great Sioux Falls was a big deal when we were kids. But things like that don't happen without outstanding leadership. And that's one of the things that Sioux Falls is very fortunate to have on many levels. We're going to start out meeting the man at the helm right now. Mayor Paul Tenhaken, he became the 32nd mayor of Sioux Falls in 2018 and was re-elected in 2022 to continue leading our state's largest city. Through his One Sioux Falls framework, he's been a tireless advocate for public safety, housing, and ensuring that kids and families can live their best lives right here in Sioux Falls, when it was named, and which was also named one of the best run cities in the entire country. He is married to Jill and is the proud dad of Jade, Max, and Nora. And I wish that I could be saying our next governor of are we doing that? No. I'd love to see that, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, school board, maybe. We'll see. Well, good morning. So great to have this many journalists here. I'm starting to sweat a little bit, actually, with this many journalists in the room. So, are we on record right now? I always have to ask that. Okay. Oh, we are on record. All right. Well, first off, you're in the Historic State Theater, which is one of the coolest venues, I think, in Sioux Falls. This building reopened during the pandemic. What was the exact date, Allison, that we reopened?
December 11th, 2020.
December 11th, 2020. It's a rough year to reopen. So, but it reopened after being, home to pigeons and bats and a lot of just dankness for many, many, many years. Until T. Denny Sanford saw an article about, is the State Theater ever going to reopen? And he made a couple calls and said, let's get that thing opened. And he approached the city and he said, hey, I'll give you some money, but you got to put in some money too, which Denny always does. He likes to leverage people. And he did, and we opened it, and it's just a gem, as you can see. And it's doing very well. It fills up. One of Denny's requirements was, hey, I'll give you this money, but we need comfy seats in here. I don't want those old wooden seats like old theaters, so you can thank him for these cushy chairs, and they recline and all the things. So thanks, Allison, for hosting us in your great, great theater here. And so, yes, I've had the honor of being the mayor since 2018. Sioux Falls, since 2018, we've grown by an Aberdeen since 2018. And so we have grown like crazy in Sioux Falls. And we're 220,000 people now, about 320,000 in our MSA. And by 2050, our MSA will be about 500,000 people if we just maintain where we've been growing over the last several decades. And so it's a long ways from where we came, back in 1876 when the village of Sioux Falls was incorporated. And the village of Sioux Falls was really formed for a few reasons. One, because of the settlers who kind of converged here, really at the head of the falls, the Sioux Falls, and was named the Sioux Falls. As a name, the Lakota and the Dakota tribes that were referred to as the Sioux, as you all know, and thus Sioux Falls was born. And fast forward, several decades, we had a period of time there where we were known as the divorce capital of the country. That was a dark time in our city's history. People came here to get divorced because we had very lax divorce laws for a while. And so where Hotel Phillips is now, that was a place where people came to stay for a certain period of time, because if they were domiciled here for a certain number of weeks, they were residents and then they could get divorced. And so that was a weird time. We're no longer the divorce capital of the world, so that's good. And then in 1906 or 8 is when John Morrell built here, also at the head of the falls. And so they have been in Sioux Falls. They're our longest serving and still one of our largest employers in Smithfield. And so that plant has been in that location for, doing the math, almost 120 years at that location. Still a great employer. If I had a magic wand, I'd move them about 5 or 6 miles out of town so we could have something else right at the head of the falls, but they're a huge part of our economy. And they're a great part of our economic kind of ecosystem here in Sioux Falls. Over the last really 20, 30 years, the diversity of our community has really, really changed, and it continues to change. And we're going to hear from 4 really great leaders in our community about that. We have over 80 different languages that are now spoken really regularly in our community. They will share some stats on this better than I can, but they'll talk about likely what the makeup of our school district is and how, our kindergarten, first, second grade classes are 30, 40, 50% non-white students now. And so we have this kind of diversity tsunami that's coming up through our school system. And our community is learning how to deal with that, how to integrate that, how to create job opportunities, how to create programs to make sure that everyone has access to the right training, the right resources to be successful here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And so one of the things that I've been passionate about, and it was mentioned in the intro, is making sure that people of all backgrounds, of all economic backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, even physical abilities, have a place where they can thrive and live and enjoy a great life. And if there's one thing I'd ask you to do before you leave town, I'd ask you to go check out Jacobson Plaza, which just opened. It's at the end of Phillips Avenue here, just before you get to the falls. It's about a $17 million park that just opened. And half of that park was funded by private donors. It's the state's largest splash pad. It's the city's largest playground, and it's an all-abilities playground. You got merry-go-rounds where wheelchairs can just get right on it and spin. You got sensory play areas for kids maybe with autism and different sensory abilities. There's a dog park. There's a refrigerated ice ribbon. With our climate today, keeping ice frozen and thawing is hard. So refrigerated ice ribbon now there. There's a lodge where people can eat, and the price points are very low. You get burger and fries for $10. And so the key to that, and it's right next to the 11th Shell, all this is free. So anyone in our community enjoys it. And I was there with the 4th of July, and I saw people who, not to judge, but I think I saw some homeless people that were hanging out there, and I saw some people who are some of the wealthiest people in our community that were there, and they were all commingling, enjoying this park, enjoying this splash pad, enjoying the music from the Sioux Falls Municipal Band. It was just a real cross-section of Sioux Falls, and I think that's what's important when you have a diverse community that keeps expanding, is making sure that you're building a community that's accessible for everybody, right? And that everybody can use and enjoy. Especially in a time when, and I was talking with Tim from Freeman, was it Tim? Yeah, there he is. We're in a time that we are kind of told, and no offense to the media, not local media, but Main Street media, national media, you turn it on and we are told everything that's wrong right now, every day. Here's stuff you should be mad about, okay? Here's stuff you should be worried about and mad about. And what local journalism does is it reminds us of all the good things that we have going on. And I really see that that's the job of a lot of you all in the room, is to remind us what a great state we live in, what great cities we live in, the hope, the optimism, how we're much more alike than unalike, all the good things that we have living in my opinion, one of the greatest states, and sorry to you all, but the greatest city is Sioux Falls, the greatest city in the country. And so you do very, very important work in keeping that optimism, that community spirit alive in our state. So I thank you all for the work that you do in that field of journalism. So welcome, glad you're here. I'm not going to take any more time because you've got 4 great voices that you're going to hear from just about how the diversity of our community has really changed over the years and for the better. So thanks for being here. Hope you have a blessed rest of your day. Drop some sales tax dollars if you can while you're here and spend some money. We will take it. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
I have a little sidebar story when he talks about being part of the national news. You were in the national spotlight not long ago when there was a young man in town who was spray painting some graffiti art. He recognized the art and commissioned him to do a painting for him that hangs in his office. And now that kid's doing great, isn't he? He has a career in art, so thank you. We appreciate that. It's the little things. Isn't it exciting when vision connects with leadership? And that's what we have going on right here in Sioux Falls. So thank you so much, Ms. Mary. Now I'd like to introduce Michelle Urbanbach. She is president of Sioux Falls Thrive, which is the Cradle to Career Workforce Development Initiative founded in 2017 by the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, Sioux Falls Development Foundation, Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, and the Sioux Empire United Way. So she's got a lot of people, good people that we're working with her. Thrive, let's see what it says. Sorry, my readers. Thrive brings together a broad range of organizations and volunteers to collaborate in tackling the difficult issues of food insecurity, out of school time, and affordable housing to kickstart action-based solutions for the issues that inhibit student success. Michelle is a longtime community advocate and communications professional who served 2 terms on the Sioux Falls City Council. On a side note, I visited some with her staff preparing for this, and they tell me that she leads with kindness, that they will follow her into any project because it's going to be a great success. And one of the nicest things I thought I've ever heard is that she is the person we want to know and have in our lives for the rest of our lives, which I thought, isn't that lovely? Please give a nice ISWNE welcome to Michelle Urbanbach.
I did pay them well to say that. Come on up, we have a great group of panelists. Good morning. It's great to have you all here. It's always exciting to see the State Theater as full as it is today. You know that as journalists and editors, you play a critical role in shaping public understanding of our topic today, immigration. Through thoughtful and accurate reporting, you influence how communities perceive complex issues, build empathy, and foster informed dialogue. Your stories can connect people across experiences, challenge misconceptions, and guide readers toward deeper awareness. This is why conversations like today's matter. As Molly noted, I lead Sioux Falls Thrive, and we really are working on behalf of our future workforce, our children. Today, as we explore how our diverse communities experience life in Sioux Falls, your role in telling these stories with care and clarity becomes even more important. So let's meet our panelists today. They come from a wide range of backgrounds and unique relationships to the community of Sioux Falls, offering diverse perspectives on the community's opportunities and challenges. Let's get started with introductions and let each panelist share their role in the community. Tanisa, welcome, thanks for being here. Please tell us a little bit about you and what brought you to Sioux Falls, and then that key question, why do you stay? Tanisa Islam.
Thank you for having me on this panel. For all of those who are not from this area, welcome to Sioux Falls. I think you'll be surprised by how much we have to offer as a rural state that brings along a lot of stereotypes. My name is Taniza Islam. I'm a first-generation American Muslim immigration attorney here in Sioux Falls. I moved here in 2012 because my husband was awarded an internal medicine residency at USD Sanford. We had a 3-year plan to stay here, and we're on year 13. We haven't revisited that plan, but I really found my niche here in being an immigration attorney in a state where our communities are growing because immigrants are coming here to grow it, and co-founded 2 sister organizations, South Dakota Voices for Peace, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, and South Dakota Voices for Justice, which is our C4 arm. And we are the state's only immigration legal service provider for children and victims of crimes, and we are the only ones that are doing advocacy work on all levels of state government. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Taniza. Moses, you've been here a while as well. Tell us a little bit about you, what brought you here, and why are you staying?
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everybody for coming. Welcome to Sioux Falls. My name is Moses Idris. I was born in a small country called Eritrea on this side of Africa by Ethiopia. And when I was 5 years old, there was a civil war going on. And I became a refugee at the age of 5, and my family and the community that I belong to called Kunama people. And Eritrea had 9 ethnic groups, and one of them was Kunama. So when the war got fierce, we had to flee our country. And I lived in an Ethiopian refugee camp for about 10 years. And in the refugee camp, it was really harsh environment. We didn't have a lot of good education system, good healthcare system, and we would get like rations from UNHCR to support us. And I've seen a lot of suffering, and our parents really struggled to raise us. But we eventually had the opportunity to resettle here in 2010, and I moved here when I was 15, and when I first moved here, I didn't understand the culture a lot, and I didn't speak any English, and I maybe spoke 5 phrases, and all of them were bad words. So, but I went to Roosevelt High School here, and graduated 2014, and I went to USF and graduated in 2020. The worst year to graduate, but we're still here. And I'm 30 now. Most people say I still look like I'm 15, but I'm married now and with a 6-month-old, and my wife and I run a youth nonprofit here called Life for the Next Generation, and we offer soccer, volleyball, and college degree prep, and I work at Avera as a community actor consultant. Thank you everybody for being here.
Thank you, Moses. Hugo, you have an interesting story as well. You're working in the housing environment now. Tell us about you, how you got here, and what makes you stay.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And my name is Hugo Barron. I'm honored to be here in the presence of you folks and the opportunity to speak on behalf of this topics here. Right around 1988, my family were going through some hardships in Mexico, and we were having a really tough time making ends meet. And so my parents decided at that time to relocate and to migrate to the United States. I was 13 of age at that time. And they saw a program that was familiar, that maybe is familiar to you guys. It's the 1986 amnesty. It's a Reform Control Act program that offered a pathway for us to join and come here to the United States. We ended up settling in Iowa, not far from here. You know, immediately, like Moses said, I spoke no English, and I had to quickly face those challenges, which is language barrier, cultural adjustment, and just kind of settling in a new country with the time, I was able to attend school and graduated from high school in Sioux City, Iowa. After graduation, I figured out that not having legal status, I couldn't apply for financial aid to go to college, so I had to put that on hold. So I figured out life still had some barriers for me to work through. And the program that my parents had applied for did not include children. So while they were in process, I was kind of just in limbo there, waiting. A few years later, I was able to get a work visa and finally went into a little higher level job opportunities that I took advantage of the being bilingual at that time and put that into practice. And within time, you go through the process, you get your residency and whatnot. During this time in Iowa, I got married and we have an only child, and she's 17 right now, and she's out of her life, right? But after going through the different years and getting married and finally getting a residency at right around 32 years of age, we applied and I was able to graduate with a bachelor's degree in behavioral science in 2013. And then I follow, during this whole time, I noticed that my family, little by little, they were moving to Sioux Falls. And we lost one member, and then we lost another member, and we're like putting it off, until a time came where we were the only ones left. And so, at that time, we needed to decide, how do we want our baby girl to grow, with or without her family? And so we're family bonded. So we wanted her to live and eventually move to Sioux Falls. There was something else that was one of the reasons that we came here. And there was something else that basically attracted us, was that during our previous visits, even short overnights, we noticed that people here were very friendly. We would go to the supermarkets and they would say hi to us. And we would go into lines at fast food restaurants and they would start short conversations, things like that. So we're like, is it us? Or, not that we don't get that in Iowa, but it's different. And so, in 2018, I lost my job in 2017, I lost my job as a social worker in Sioux City, and so it gave me an opportunity to come here and try it out. And that's when I began working in 2000. So we moved in 2018, 2019. I started working at the Sioux Park Housing Partnership. It's a nonprofit 501c3 that works with individuals who are looking for housing assistance resources, either rental or first-time home buyers. And in 2021, I had the privilege of becoming the president of the organization by my mentor, great friend Jim Schmidt. Some of you might know him. But anyway, my wife and I learned that it wasn't just the city itself and the family, it was the people here in Sioux Falls that, conquered us. So in 2018, when we packed our things, we said goodbye to Iowa, and we never looked back. And, it was a new beginning for us, and to be honest with you, Sioux Falls has really gave us more than we ever imagined.
Thank you, Hugo. That's amazing. Even just immigrating from Sioux City to Sioux Falls is kind of uplifting to those of you that know South Dakota. Zach, you've got a pretty amazing journey behind you as well, and going forward. Talk about how you got to Sioux Falls, and then tell us why you stay.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you all for being here. My name is Zach Aquay, and my story is very similar to Moses. There was a civil war that erupted in my country of Sudan. I became a refugee at the age of 4, and at the age of 9, through a resettlement agency, we came to the United States. I've been here for over 20 years now, with 15 years in Sioux Falls. And I've had the opportunity, lived in Portland, Maine for a little bit, lived in Nashville, Tennessee, lived in Omaha, Nebraska, and I've experienced these different regions. What keeps me here, it's just amazing. I had the opportunity to go to a good school. I lived in a safe neighborhood. I graduated from Washington High School here in 2013. Went to college at USD with a bachelor's degree in nursing, and I recently started a nonprofit called STEM the Gap. And the purpose of this nonprofit is to pair middle school students with college students so that they can be mentored and tutored in STEM subjects to give them the strong foundation they need to succeed in that next phase of their academic journey. So one day they can become nurses, doctors, engineers, computer scientists. So in Sioux Falls, that has been well to me, and that's why I stay.
Aren't they all amazing? Thank you again, all of you, for being here. I did have to ask some favors. You know that you see in your program it changed a little bit this week for us. Hugo jumped in and he's been a great addition to this conversation, so I'm excited to dive into these deeper conversations. So as you all know, with many American frontier communities, early settlers in Sioux Falls thrived on shared values like their Christian faith and hard work and a strong community. Today, in a world where immigration debates can often divide us, there's a real need to build a more unifying narrative. Moses, you talked about this a little bit. You work with new employees at Avera Health, and you use the unifying power of soccer, and now volleyball as well, I know, but you've helped create community among strangers. Could you share more about those experiences, and what advice then would you offer to the rest of us to help us really focus on that idea of common ground in today's immigration discussions? Moses.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Michelle. So I'd like to start with my very job, and I work as a community outreach consultant, and what I get to do on my job is I kind of just help Avera understand their refugee immigrant story, their challenges, their needs in the community, and also their aspiration and the talent that they bring to, and how Avera can step in and support them and tailor the Avera services to uplift the communities from refugee immigrant backgrounds. So what I really like to say is through my job, I not only help employees get jobs, but I get to be out in the community, help anybody with any needs, whether it's transportation, education, anything that they will need to start a new life here. I help support them. So what I want to focus is the first thing that we have to understand when it comes to helping support refugees and immigrants is we have to not only see them as people who lost a home or who have challenges back in their homeland, we have to see them as humans. And that's the first thing that we have to understand, that we have to meet them where they're at. And as human beings, we all have the same needs. We all want to be able to have a job, have a career, so we can support ourselves, we can support our families and children, and we want to be able to live a life that's free and that we want to be contributing. And refugees and immigrants are no different. They want to be able to start a new life and to contribute to the communities that they live in. So that's what the first thing that we have to recognize is that they're human, and that we have to be able to see them as humans and see how we can serve and support them. And even through my work with the youth, with soccer and volleyball, our kids mostly come from refugee and immigrant backgrounds too, and they all have their own different challenges in terms of their families or their own behavioral challenges, and there's a lot of drastic behavior difference between all the kids that we work with. And even last week we had a kid that was so frustrated about something that happened, and he took off his cleats and he threw it just to the whole group, and it hit somebody in the face. And that was really drastic, and we've never seen that, but those are the behaviors that we get to work with, and we've been able to work with him and help encourage him, and he's drastically changed that behavior, and he hasn't had any problems after that. But that's just one story that I want to share. But whenever those things happen, I try to meet them where they are, why they're frustrated. And refugees, anybody that has challenges, if you take the time to get to know them and to learn what their challenges are, you're able to empathize with them and help support them. So that's what we say in terms of unifying. We have to find a common ground that we all have the same needs, and from there, then we can support each other.
Common ground, awesome. Hugo, Sioux Empire Housing Partnership does a tremendous amount of educational work with people really from all over the globe. And I wonder how you would add to what Moses' reflections are about finding that common ground among our diverse communities.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I'd like to add that in my experience, now my experience when I, as an immigrant, was not probably as harsh as the stories that you both shared. But I do want to, empathize on the fact that when you're saying your young teenage years, and for some reason, you are uprooted from your homeland, from your friends, your family. At least in my experience, when I first arrived here, there was some resentment towards my parents and towards my community, my government. I just couldn't understand why we were not able to be free and prosperous where we came from at that time. And I carry that anger, and when you carry some anger and resentment, it's probably going to come out at some point unintentionally towards someone. And those may be, in being a social worker for 12 years, I worked with kids at risk, and that was one of the main reasons amongst being sometimes abandoned by parents, so they were single parent homes. That combination of those two was enough to kind of understand the behaviors, let alone, we still needed to address those things. Now, I believe that just like the early settlers that came to Sioux Falls and built this beautiful city with their hard work, their values, their faith, and all of those moral values, the newcomers that are now here in the community are also facing an opportunity to keep adding on to this. It's never going to stop, right? Sioux Falls is always thriving and growing, and so in my experience, most individuals that we work with in my line of work, and believe me, like Michelle said, we see people from every part of the world, just about, and at the end of the day, all I see is a human being, just like you, just like me, with very similar needs that you and I are looking after, which would be, safety, right, housing, work, and most of them, they don't want to do anything that will jeopardize that. They don't want to, cross the line, either if they're your neighbors or so. They may do so because it's a custom, maybe in their village, in their town, in their city, that they can just go across. Where over here, we may be like, okay, we do have, invisible boundaries that, we expect you to kind of not cross, here and there at certain times of the day and whatnot, but it's a matter of learning, it's a matter of education. So we do go over some of those things, as simple as, hey, if there's no fence between your yard and the other person's yard, there is an invisible line. There is actually a boundary line that you and your kids, it's best that you learn those, and then now kids can kind of go and play and get to know each other and maybe create some freedoms over those boundaries, but begin by introducing yourself and kind of soft introductions, and they're eager to learn.
Good, thank you, Hugo. Zach, you've had, I want you to talk a little bit more on this theme as well, that concept of what have you experienced as you've really started to build your own networks, and how are you using those lessons of common ground in your own life?
Michelle. As a nurse in South Dakota, I have a lot of opportunities to find a common ground with people who on the surface might be different than I am. I always get the opportunity at work to take care of patients from rural Iowa, rural Minnesota, rural South Dakota. And these are farmers in their 70s and 80s, and we might be polar opposites when it comes to a lot of things. And two questions always come up. Where are you from, and how did you end up in South Dakota? I tell them my story, on how my family fled war in Sudan and how we came to the States. And after I'm done telling my story, the remnants of their immigrant roots begin to surface. Maybe it comes in the form of them taking pride in their Norwegian or German heritage. Or some of them may even remember their grandparents speaking German, Swedish. And by the time I discharged them, there's something that was created that wasn't there before. And we have some common understanding of why we're all here.
That's powerful. Thank you, Zach. Tamisa, let's go just a little bit deeper. As an immigration lawyer, you're really deeply involved in these conversations every day. You know firsthand how immigration today differs from when, for example, and Zach alluded to it, my great-grandmother arrived in South Dakota as a 9-year-old from Norway. Can you explain what's the current legal pathway for immigrating to the United States, and then share how these options are really affecting families and communities in Sioux Falls?
Thank you. So I am a contrarian, so I have to start with pushing back on the premise of the original question just a bit, and acknowledge that we're on native land. There are 9 reservations that are found within the borders of South Dakota. So this narrative that we continue of hard work and ethic of our settlers, I think we need to really be more honest about what that means. And I can't help but see the images that we see today of ICE abducting people and terrorizing families and communities to what it probably was like back then, in a time that most European ancestors, or descendants, if you will, think of as a really great time. So just wanted to say that. As an immigration attorney for the last almost 15 years now, this has been the hardest time for us as well, because there are no answers, like 0 answers to any questions that people may have, because the rules have all changed, and they continue to change. So this idea of, refugees and amnesty programs no longer exist as of today. The first thing this administration did was end refugee resettlement. End it. That has drastic consequences on resettlement agencies, especially in rural America, because there's usually one. And I know during the first administration, Trump administration, resettlement agencies closed throughout. So obviously then there's the trickle effect. Will we see a Moses or a Zach in 10, 15, 20 years? Think about the value added by these really young, inspirational, beautiful members of our community. I mean, we have all created our own nonprofits, right? I was thinking about that as you all were talking. Resettlement has ended, so I don't know what that looks like in terms of impact in 10, 20, 30 years from now. There really is, and if there's there's no way to legally come to the United States by foot right now. So again, this narrative of welcoming the stranger and being a safe haven for people who could prosper has been completely dismantled. There's no asylum has ended at our border. Many people, amnesty and asylum kind of go hand in hand in terms of the people who are coming and the reasons that they were coming. So that no longer exists either. So what impact does that have in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? I mean, there are still options to come to the United States on tourist visas, if you will, and I was having a very interesting conversation with the tourism industry here, which is a big sector of our economy, and they are worried about how many tourist visas are going to be provided to people who want to come to Mount Rushmore and the Badlands and all of the great things our state has to offer. So, I feel like I'm always the bleak Debbie Downer in these conversations, but the reality is, the absolute reality is, there really is minimal opportunities to lawfully come to the United States right now. During the Biden administration, they created the CBP-1 program that was literally one additional way to come to the United States lawfully. Like, they were trying to figure out how are some lawful pathways that we can provide, and I would argue that's what we need to really think about. But CBP-1 was ended within the first week of the administration taking office too. So that begs the question, what is the immigration policy and strategy right now? We've basically cut off all ways to lawfully enter the country.
Thanks, Teresa. It's hard to listen to. So Sioux Falls, like many Heartland communities, we have continued to grow under the previous laws, and we've evolved. And it really does rely on the arrival of new residents from diverse backgrounds. At times, longtime residents, and it's not just Sioux Falls, but sometimes us old-timers, we're looking at the newbies going, they're just outsiders. They're people that bring us more challenges than solutions. And this question now is about bridging that divide. You really are boots on the ground with individuals and families who are seeking a place to call home. From your experience, let's talk about some storytelling strategies that our media friends can use to help everyone, whether they're immigrants or longtime residents, see each other as neighbors rather than outsiders.
Thank you. It's such an important question, one that I live day in day at my job as well as a community member. It's a challenge that we're all facing, and I keep thinking of, I want to understand both sides. I think in order to meet halfway and try to understand each other, because there's usually at least two sides to a story, to a need, right? And we both have to sit down and acknowledge and not dismiss each other's differences. And how do we do that at a level, say, entry level or initial level, not necessarily politically speaking? In my line of work, when we have, say, a workshop for some home buyers, or a workshop for rental education, financial assessment and credit and things like that, we do very well mixing, right? And mixing in the sense that there's going to be people with different backgrounds, okay? And we're basically going to understand that we're all trying to kind of attain the same goals, right? And we have similar challenges. Now, you may not see this, maybe you already have, you're settled in wherever you live, but there are people in our community struggling with making ends meet, right? And immigrants, right? After school. So all of these activities, if we look at them, if we join forces, we can come together. For example, I had a booth at the Cinco de Mayo. I don't know if any of you attended the Cinco de Mayo. That was a nice place to kind of bring together and talk and meet and get to know each other and really know that, this may be strangers here, but they carry on pretty much the same way we do. They have children, many of them are engaged in sports, they need jobs and things like that. So for what I recommend is that in order to meet this reality that can bond them together is to recognize that individuals like us and immigrants, we may have more to contribute than we make out to be more of a burden in some of the rhetoric that you see in the media sometimes. But we do have a lot to contribute, and I say get to know each other first. And any level, even if you go to a supermarket, try an international supermarket at some point. I know it's kind of scary to do because I've done the opposite to where I go to an Asian supermarket, and now I'm the stranger there, right? And I mean, within seconds, they're welcoming. They're not looking at me, and if they're looking at me, it's like, can we help you, right? Because they may think that, okay, what is he looking for? Can I help him find it easier? And then I'll be like, yeah, I'm looking for this, and then next thing I know, I'm talking, and my perception that I might have had, it's 50% gone or more, right? But I expose myself very safely. So I invite you to maybe try some of those things and just be open. I hope that kind of
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, walking into an ethnic grocery store, terrifying as a white person, right? Zach, what do you have that you would add to what Hugo's talking about?
Thank you, Michelle. Storytelling is powerful. Not too long ago, I had the opportunity to have lunch with our mayor who spoke here earlier today. And 3 great things came out of that. One, he introduced me to Michelle Urbanbach. 2, he connected me with a local college, Augustana University, and he basically sent them an email out saying, hey, there's this young man here. He just started a nonprofit. Could you guys please lend him a listening ear? And that's been amazing. And 3, he used a non-traditional media, Instagram. He posted a picture of me and him on Instagram, and he stated 3 things. He mentioned my name, that I was a refugee, and that I was a nurse at Sanford Health. And I didn't know that Sioux Falls was so small. You know, I go to work, oh my goodness, you were with the mayor, you know, and everybody around town just, oh my gosh, you're with the mayor. And it opened up conversation to a lot of things. Some people don't even know what a refugee is, you know. And I kind of have to tell them my story, where I come from, and how I got here. And by him posting that picture, it kind of beats back against the national narrative of immigrants or non-contributors. And it beats back against the narrative of that states, you know, that portrays young black males as a symbol of crime. And when you have a mayor who's a Republican and a refugee in one picture, I mean, it just, I don't know, it opened up conversation to a lot of things. And that we're all here to build a better society.
That's a remarkable story, Zach. Thanks. Tanisa, what can you add to that thread of storytelling? How can we build ourselves up and not talk so much about them and us?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the primary reasons we started South Dakota Voices for Peace. I mean, our story begins in 2017, where there was bigoted and hateful legislation in our state capital. We formed an organic group of people. We took members of our communities, immigrants, refugees, Muslims, to go to Pierre for their first time to testify on their own behalf, to be their own voice, to legislators who come from small towns who have never had a conversation with anybody who looks like any of us. And it was a good reality check in terms of who our audience is here in South Dakota. And another lobbyist told me, a prominent legislator told that person, that he had never seen a refugee in the state capitol speaking on their own behalf, advocating, in this case, against a very hateful bill. I also want to acknowledge, and so, at Voices, we really don't like to fall into the trap of saying we have to humanize humans, because that's very hurtful. It's very hurtful to say, I need to show everybody in the audience, South Dakota, that I'm as human as you are, right? So what we really concentrate on, and language really matters in the work that we do, we concentrate on lifting the voices of people in our communities doing amazing things that the average person doesn't know about. And we call this putting a name to the face. And that's why, as local journalists, it is critical, in my opinion, to find local leaders like we have on this panel and highlight them, because like Zach said, he went to work and everyone was like, oh my gosh, I saw you with the mayor. If you put my face on your publication and no one knows who I am, and they're not gonna come across me in the grocery store at work, it's not something they can relate to. So building that relationship as local journalists really comes from highlighting the people and lifting the voices of the people in your local communities.
Good. Moses, you had a really great nugget for us on this one. We talk about that us versus them. What's your response?
Yeah, and my friends shared a lot about different opportunities that you personally can get involved in your profession or in your personal life, and I really want to thank them. And I would just like to add just a personal story of when I first moved here, and how a lot of people have helped me in my life. And first person is when I was graduating from high school and started my first job at Target. He was almost 70, and he used to serve in the army, and he just found a part-time job after retiring at Target, and he was a trainer there. And when I first started working at Target, he was training me, but he was very curious about where I came from, and he would ask me a lot of questions. And in the army, he used to go to Africa for military, and when he came back, he just knew a lot. So I was sharing a lot about my life, and we became good friends, and I worked there for 4 years, and 4 years that I've been there, we developed a lot of connection. And then he introduced me to his wife, and I would go there to their house, and he would just take me a lot of places. He used to like to go to therapies, and he would take me there. And he also liked to collect Hot Wheels. He had like more than 100 of them, and he would share like how he collected them, and we were very fond of each other. And he got to meet my family too, and he would take us to circus with my big brothers and cousins. And I just like to share that just because he could have been saying that he's an outsider, so I'm just gonna train him on my job and leave him alone. He could have said that, but he took the extra step of inviting me to his home, and then eventually I got invited to my house, and we were able to connect. And he was white, and like he didn't even he might have been nervous at the beginning, but eventually he got to meet my family, comfortable, and that's a story that we would like to highlight. We should be highlighting, even in our personal life too. There's a lot of refugees and immigrants in the community that we could engage with them and get to know their story and see how we can support them. And I also like to touch a little story of, it's a very old story. I just recently read about it on Facebook, but it's kind of way back and it's late in the 1800s. And it's a story of a Muslim person and a Christian guy. And the Muslim guy, his name's Muhammad, and he's blind. And the Christian guy is a dwarf. And the Muslim guy, he would carry him on his back, and they would go to, on his shoulder, and they would go to a lot of places. And the Christian guy, his name's Samir, and Samir would tell him all the things that he sees. And that's how they support each other. And they would sell things, and Samir would tell them stories. And that was the kind of, I think it's in Damascus, way late in the 1800s. But I enjoyed reading that story because it shows a story of compassion and inner independence and love and respect. And eventually one of them passed away. But I just recently read that story recently, and then I wanted to share that because in these times we can let our differences divide us and say they're different from us, or we can recognize our differences but focus on what unifies us. And I know as Americans we like our independence, but as humans, if you're interdependent with somebody, there's a lot of opportunities that you can work on and support each other and overcome a lot of challenges.
Something you said to us the other day, Zach, was proximity breeds compassion. Very well, very good, thank you. Data from a study by the Augustana Research Institute here in Sioux Falls, it was commissioned by Sioux Falls Thrive, reveals that at any given time between 4,000 and 6,000 students in Sioux Falls are unsupervised outside of school hours. That's about 25% of our student population for context. Programs for after-school, holiday, and summer care are often financially out of reach for many families. Yet research consistently shows that children are safer and perform better academically when they have access to quality out-of-school programming. Zach, you honestly, sweetheart, you haven't been out of school very long yourself, and while you don't have children of your own, you're already investing in the next generation through that after-school program that you've created. What inspires this work for you, and what outcomes do you hope to see for students in some of our high-need neighborhoods?
Thank you, Michelle. What inspires me? I struggled in college. I really struggled. I mean, I took this college algebra course, and it was just so hard. And I got to the point where I wanted to drop out, and I told myself that college is not for me. But through perseverance, I was able to get over it. And now I'm a nurse at Sanford. And I know a lot of these kids in the Sioux Falls School District are going through the same things. They have parents who are not actively engaged in their child's education because they're at work, paying bills and all of that stuff, and they themselves had never even went to school. And what outcome do I want to see? Well, I want to see better attendance, I want to see better grades, and I want to see these kids going to college. And I don't want them becoming a permanent underclass. When I look 15 to 20 years ahead, I want to see these kids whose parents came here as migrants or refugees, that they can become our next doctors, nurses, engineers, computer scientists, and that they can contribute to building a stronger community.
Moses, you're seeing this issue through your lens now. You mentioned it earlier, 6 months as a new dad, congratulations. You created, prior to this, created a community soccer program, really from the ground up. From your experience, how do you see opportunities like youth sports and homework help shifting the educational path for children of immigrant families?
Yeah, our son Mateo is 6 months old and he's learning to crawl now, so I'm gonna get my hands full soon. But in terms of just youth sports or just engaging youth, Zach mentioned it. There's a lot of refugees and immigrant parents that work long hours at Smithfield or other places, and they're not able to, they don't have the time, even though they're willing, they don't have the time to invest in their kids, so there's a lot of lack of parental guidance with the kids, and when kids don't have the guidance, they get in a lot of trouble. And in my personal life, when I was in college, I would see a lot of kids hanging out at a park, and I was there's a library, and in that library there's a high school and elementary school, and I would go to the library to work on my assignment as a college student, and I would see a lot of kids just hanging out outside the library, but they wouldn't have a soccer ball, they wouldn't have a coach, and they would just mess around, and then I would see them and I would wish that I could do something for them, but I would make excuses that I'm just a broke college student, so I can't do anything at this moment. But eventually, these kids grew up, and once they got to high school, they started going into the wrong track in life, and they were involved in gangs, and then they were involved in shooting, and they were from my own community, from the Panama community, and they were calling themselves Panama gangs, and they were on the news, and it was putting a bad highlight on my Panama community. And I'm very fond of my Panama community, and we're very caring people, and we want to be able to contribute good things to the community. So when I saw that, then I said I had to do something about the youth, and I wanted them to learn how to read and write, and I would take them to the library, but they would spend more time playing games with the computers than focusing on reading. And then eventually I bought a soccer ball, and it was mostly my cousins and my little brothers, and we had about 10 of them. And then every year, after starting the soccer, it kept growing, and I've been doing that for 8 years now, and it grew into 200 kids now. And we work with a lot of high school liaisons, and they're able to, 30 of them have played in high school soccer, and then 2 of them recently graduated, and one of them is gonna go to Bright Cliff in Sioux City, and he's gonna take college soccer, and another one is gonna take accounting in university. And these are the successes that we see in terms of getting kids involved, because we don't only focus on sports, but we focus on character development, like I mentioned earlier, how they can behave better, communicate better, and we get to work with their high school liaisons to help focus on their education and on their attendance. So getting kids involved in extracurricular activities, it really makes a difference, and mentoring students, mentoring kids helps make a lot of difference, and Sioux Falls is great representative.
Thank you. Hugo, what are you noticing? You know, you're not working directly with kids necessarily, but parents and grandparents, what challenges, possibilities are facing children from your perspective in our community today?
Thank you, that's an important question as well. Believe it or not, in our day-to-day, we do work with parents, sometimes grandparents, and in the last 3 years, we have been working with very young adults. In fact, we've, between all the different housing agencies, we have the record of having the youngest person buy their first home. She's 18 years of age. Keep in mind, our programs are designed for low to moderate income families. So we're talking, individuals like you that are, working out there and trying to make ends meet, and to be able to hear that and know that and see others follow. It's a great example. Now, the other side that we see is that, as families are trying to build a stable family environment, they're also struggling with different challenges like transportation, like I said, financial hardships. And at the end of the day, they have kids that are gonna need support. And families who have 2-3 kids, it triples, on that responsibility. So the reality is that there are programs out there, but many parents can't afford to enroll 2-3 kids into that membership program. And so some of these kids may be just kind of left out there to engage in whatever it is that may be available for that family at that time. So we do need to find more funding sources and more supportive sources to build things like sports, soccer, music, clubs, mentorship programs. How do we multiply Moses into 2 or 3, right? So that we can bring this to other, and how do we engage with them? I asked them, I have a Hispanic coach, and I asked him if he had met him, and he said, oh yeah, we work together. So that, okay, great. And I wonder, are there other coaches, Caucasian or of other ethnicities, are we working together, or are we just competitors? Are we too shy? We need to bring ourselves together, and the more we are, because at the end of the day, your kids, my kids, everybody's kids, they need to have role models, they need to have things to do, right? And it's gonna just support and make a better community. I gave the testimonial that when I lived in Sioux City working as a social worker with kids at risk, my biggest challenge was working with kids who were in gangs. In other words, in Sioux City, just an hour and 10, there are gangs that have been there for years. They're well established. I come to Sioux Falls and lived here for the first 5 years. I still question, we don't have, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't have a well-established, dedicated gang. And that says about, what our police force and everybody else is doing, right? But also about these programs, okay, that are keeping our kids busy. Think about that. We don't want any gang to ever get started here.
Good. Thanks, Hugo. Tunisia, talk about safety and academic opportunity from really a legal and human rights lens. Your team at South Dakota Voices for Peace, and I'm so glad so many of them are here. I hope we get to chat with them. What are you seeing in terms of impact on kids and their families and truly our future workforce? And then kind of as a side note, if you could just briefly talk about whether you're seeing signs of extreme deportation activity that we're hearing about in other parts of the country.
Yeah, at this moment, I don't think you can talk about what's going on without mentioning the fear, the palpable fear that our communities are living under every minute of every day. At South Dakota Voices for Peace, we provide legal services to children who are in immigration court. And we lost federal funding to provide legal services for them. And we're part of a network of 100 similar organizations across the country. And that same day that they announced ending the funding for these legal services, the administration announced that they were going to specifically target unaccompanied children and their sponsors for deportation. So I can't help, I get the privilege of hovering over our communities and understanding what's going on and hearing from impacted community members how they're feeling. We were just talking about it while we were sitting here, of how the Kunama community is feeling in this moment. But there seems to be 2 very separate communities in Sioux Falls. From my perspective, of course, I have my immigration hat on right now, and probably in most communities. There's the community who fears every minute that there will be some sort of ICE enforcement action on them, their loved ones, someone that they know. And then there's the other community who does not fear that. And that really impacts how specifically our Hispanic community is navigating through Sioux Falls right now. It's been devastating for me to see Hispanic businesses that were thriving, that were packed with people, now have nobody. And Hispanic businesses are suffering, but who knows that? Who knows that? It's been very fascinating to me to learn, because I'm so in it, right? Like, I can't imagine someone not knowing, but in talking to leaders in our community, elected leaders and non-elected leaders, they had no idea that this is what's going on here in Sioux Falls. And, you know, in terms of ICE enforcement activity, specifically here in South Dakota, you know, what we're seeing so far is that ICE or HSI or whatever the agency is picking up one person from here and two people from here, one person from the gas station parking lot, two people from the workplace. And I've really tried to think through what is the strategy here. And the conclusion I have come up with is cruelty. The strategy is cruelty. Because by picking up one person here and two people there, none of us are getting too mad about that, the people not affected. But it keeps those communities impacted directly in so much fear. And just the other day, we received a phone call about undocumented parents who wanted to drop off their U.S. citizen child at the airport because he was going to, I don't know, like a summer study abroad program or something. And they called our office and said, should I go to the airport? I mean, we can't answer that question for them.
Am I safe? The question is,
Yeah,
am I safe?
should I go to the airport? How many of us in this room have asked that question? The questions our communities are asking themselves right now are so different. And so I can't help but think of what is the effect of this. I mean, after the administration took office, we were receiving calls from our clients. Should we go to school? Should I send my kids to school? Should I go to the grocery store? Should I go to Walmart? I heard this was happening. I heard that was happening. And what's essentially happening is people are staying inside. And that's happening here, and I have a good bet that it's probably happening in your communities too. And that's why, again, I'll come back to your role as local journalists is to tell the story that's happening in your community. Because what's happening in California, like no one here in South Dakota cares or wants to even think about Californians. But what's happening in Sioux Falls, people are shocked. And we need more people to be shocked because this is a very different moment that we need to acknowledge.
Thanks, Teresa. Some of you know I married a former sports editor, so I'm going to call an audible. So my staff knows we're going kind of off the clock. We have one last question we really want answers to. And we have all talked about kind of clarifying and gelling our answers. And so I'm going to ask you to do this answer a little shorter than what we've been doing because we are getting close to time. We know that the city of Sioux Falls was founded by immigrants who were seeking a better life. More recent waves of immigrants have continued that tradition, bringing energy, culture, and talent, but also adding pressures to community systems like affordable housing, food access, education, legal services. Now, each of you panelists brings a unique perspective to this complex picture. And this is the hardest question on the list, and you know this. So, Denise, I want you to start. What's your reaction to that idea, that concept of immigrants add pressure to community systems? The statement will drive headlines. It can also miss the bigger picture, though. So talk about how you think local media might reframe that narrative, show how immigrants and diverse communities are, in fact, helping revitalize the Heartland.
Yeah, I think that's really important. The latest census data shows that the only reason Sioux Falls is growing and that the state as a whole is growing is because migrants are coming here and growing it. Huron, South Dakota has the largest refugee population living there, and they are thriving. You know, immigrants and refugees who come, they are actually employing teachers at our schools. If it wasn't for them, our classrooms wouldn't be so big. Immigrants and refugees, especially in rural America, are growing the need for more services, police, fire, what have you. And that's the story no one talks about. Maybe once every 5 years, you'll see that headline. And for me, it's so critical to understand there are 20,000 jobs open in South Dakota. I checked last night so I would have the right number. Who's gonna fill those jobs? What's that gonna do to our economy if the strategy is to get rid of all immigrants? I mean, it's just, the writing is clearly on the wall.
Moses, what do you think if I say that? Immigrants add stress to community systems. What's your response? And how can we change that narrative?
Yeah, as I shared earlier, I get to work with a lot of refugee and immigrants through my grad job and also with my soccer parents. And I lived here for 15 years and I've had a lot of conversation and I've known a lot of families from refugee immigrant background. And mostly I do get to work a lot with my economic community. So I would share what the economic community left back home or how they survived or lived back home. And every refugee and immigrant is different, even from person to person too. They have different challenges, so we can bucket all of them in one bucket. But I would just like to share about the economic community and mostly my economic community back home. Some of them live in bigger cities and some of them have lived in smaller villages. And those ones that live in bigger city, they are able to get education and there were teachers back home, there were doctors, and when they come here, they're not able to find the same job. But when they moved here, they left because of challenges like war and just political challenges too. So when they come here, they're not just coming here just because they want to come here and live an easier life. They want to be able to come here, live a better life, contribute, because they know what they left back home. They have faced so many challenges. And even for me too, we waited for 2 years for my family's application to get processed so we can arrive here. But that 2 years, we were so excited. Every time that we get closer, we were so excited. And then it takes so much time for other refugees. Some of them have waited for 10 years. But they're so excited to come here. They're so excited to contribute. And they're willing to share their stories, their challenges, and they're willing to do everything that they can to build a better life here. And as Denise shared, their contribution is real. So we just have to educate ourselves on that and be able to empathize with others that may have challenges and see how we can support them.
Good, thanks, Moses. Hugo, and just a capsule. Respond to that phrase.
Yes, I'd like to, I appreciate the opportunity. This is something that kind of hits home. You know, in my opinion, the idea that immigrants are putting pressure on community systems like housing, healthcare, education, and so on, is not entirely wrong. But it's only one side of the story. What's often missing is the bigger picture. Immigrants are also a big part of holding those same systems together. Now, I'm a victim of this in this sense. My wife and I see the legal pathway to legal status, and that came through sometime in 2012, and then her visa permit was revoked because there was a discrepancy in the process. So then we had to figure out a way to reapply and so on. long story short, it's been 3 years since my wife and I attempted to process back into the United States, and it hasn't worked. So we're experiencing what other families fear is to be split. And it's really tough because when you go and reapply because there was a small discrepancy and you're told, well, there's another one, and you can't, process this simple stuff from within. Now you have to wait in line and you have to reapply. And what happens is now they took that other income from my family, right? So my daughter and I now we're on ourselves, and now my wife has to also stay supported wherever she's at in Mexico. And now we have, more hardship. Now I can't do it necessarily with my own income, right? So I've been this close to applying for SNAP, for applying for any type of financial assistance, but we don't, and I won't. I will get a third job if I have to, okay? And many friends that I know, they're the same way. I do know people that are, and not from all different backgrounds, that are taking advantage of the system. So that's why I didn't say it's not entirely a lie. But the same system, the same due process is not being applied, and it's being, it's too long, and it pushes people to maybe do tap into those forcibly, into those resources. So I just wanted to bring that up, that most people that I know, most immigrants that I know, they're here to contribute, not to take away.
Hugo, thank you for sharing that vulnerable story. Zach,
We'll do it.
Zach, you have to wrap up. What's your reaction when you hear that assumption that immigrants add pressure to community systems?
That's really hard for me to see, Michelle. My mother, and many like her, who came here at an older age, and they scrub floors and clean toilets at hospitals. They work at the slaughterhouse, at factories, in dairy farms. And they take a lot of jobs that most Native Americans don't want. When I was driving here today, I seen an entire crew of construction workers who were Hispanic. All I can see is just contribution. And it's very sad because immigrants and refugees are seen as just an ingredient, right, to grow the economic pie to a lot of business leaders. But they're never given or shown the recipe to grow their own pie and to contribute at an even greater rate. Immigrants are just, they're dying to attain that American dream, to be the first person in their family to graduate from college, to become a nurse, a doctor, to start a business. But most come from places of very little resources, and it's very challenging. Thank you, Michelle.
Let's thank our panelists for sharing this. We do have time for Q&A, and journalists are curious people, and so we are open to that. We do have friends in the audience who are representing Sioux Falls Media, and I'm going to ask you to hold your questions for later. The panelists have agreed to hang out with us for a little bit after to do personal interviews and answer any follow-up questions for you all. Audience members, I'd ask you to raise your hand if you have a question. We've got Dave over here and Allison over here to get you a microphone, and please then tell us your name and where you're from, and then here's the hard part of the assignment. Keep it kind of short so we can have as many questions as possible. Let's start with you, name and where you're from.
I'm Eric Martin from Marion, Kansas. Many of the people in this room are from towns that have populations not in the 6 figures, 4 figures, but down in maybe 4 figures, even smaller than that. We have a shortage of people in these communities. We have a surplus of jobs. We have no people that will handle some jobs. Now, they're not great jobs, as Zach was saying. They're not going to be great jobs for people who come there. But how can we convince immigrants, assuming we can solve the problems of getting them back to the point that we have them again, how can we get them to be willing to settle in very small communities? And the advantage of this is we don't have to humanize humans in small communities. We're so small, we can't see labels. We can only see people. There are people who are next to us. We have to deal with them on a regular daily basis. And I think the process is much easier in these small communities, but we don't have a lot of motion into very small communities. Is there something we can do to get them there? And I'll say the further reason is all of you folks are like second generation. One of the big shortages in the rurally populated areas is leadership. You show that the second generation of the people coming in abroad are becoming good leaders to a community. We could use that as well. So there are positives about this, but how do we get your parents to want to go to a little tiny town out in the middle of nowhere?
I'm going to throw that one to Zach. Zach, you talked to us the other day about some experiences you had in other places. Can you talk about that idea? Why do I want to, or anyone, want to move other places?
Absolutely. I've had the opportunity to live in different regions, as Michelle said. And Sioux Falls is probably the smallest city I've ever lived in. And there's over 200,000 people here. I think the main thing is safety, good school, work with steady hours, and the ability to develop themselves and to bring some of their culture with them, whether it's opening a restaurant, whether it's having a small cultural centers that, on the weekends they can go there and have something that can make them remember home. Because it's very hard to leave and just have nothing to remind you of home. I think it would be very hard for any of us in here to move somewhere foreign and just have nothing that we can remember or hold on to or anything like that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thanks, Zach. Any others want to add to that? Moses?
Yeah, I would just like to add to what Zach was saying about having things that make you remind you of hope back home. And for July 4th, I went to visit a small town that my wife grew up in, and she grew up kind of by Watertown, but her grandparents lived in a small town called Lake Northern, and the population was 500. And we were driving around, and she was showing me her old high school and all the places, the farms, and she asked me a question of, would you imagine having Kunama people live here? And she asked that question because I would share that Kunama people they're mostly farmers and pastoralists. They take care of animals, and then it had me wondering, but I know the challenge is that if just one family moves there, if there's a language barrier, it will be hard for them to adjust to that. Even the reason why a lot of people move to Sioux Falls is that they have family here, and they would want that feeling of familiarity, because as humans we know that we like things that are familiar. But I would say that if there's people that are willing to offer something just for us, kind of like a tour, if you have a farm in a small town, if you're willing to take a community of people just to show them this is what the city is like, this is what the life is like, and you have a job, maybe one family, two families move there, and they have a job and they're able to help support their family, then they will see that and move there. But it will take a lot of people willing to step up to make that place more familiar with that for them and to create those opportunities. And more people see that, then they'll be willing to move. That's why I would like to share.
Good. Anyone else want to add to that? Awesome, thank you. Yes?
This is an economic development question as you posted, right? So in rural communities, they're going out of their way to incentivize coming and staying and growing and living. They're incentivizing by providing entrepreneurship grants so you can come and build your business. How are you incentivizing immigrant communities to come, right? And talking to the experts on what is it that would feel safe? What is it that would feel familiar? How can you integrate that into your economic development plan?
Good. Other questions?
Back here. Go ahead.
I wonder if we could do something, approach this differently. I live in very red world and am not, I actually was ejected from the Republican Party. It was the only party in our county to do something I'm disavowed, but we have to meet people where they are, and I think what is a thing that has gone wrong is it used to be we've had sponsors, like I'm from Laurel, Nebraska, and we sponsored the doctor from Vietnam. That family came in, and so everybody was sponsored, and the community was invested in those people succeeding, and that you got familiarity, you got mutual benefit. We I think lost it. I don't know. So the question will be, what happened to that program that still exists? Because I had people telling me, a woman was working in Kansas, and the immigrants get all of this money and all the support and things that Americans don't get. And I think that policy, whenever it came, I don't know what happened, it was well intended, but the consequence has been that people are going, hey, these people are getting things that we are not, we're paying money and they're getting that. It's lovely support and very kind, but ultimately it has had a horrible result in these horrific things that we are seeing where people are being criminal, it looks like criminal people showing up in black and masks and stuff and bundling people off the street, which now means that anyone could be disappeared without consequences, without any way to find out what has happened to them, where they're going. It's third world that we've achieved, and how to disempower it, because the facts aren't really an issue. Most people I know, and I know a lot of people, in our red community, if you see a black person, you presume they're a doctor. And that is the presumption, is that they're a contributing member of the society and we really need them. So the facts are irrelevant for whatever's going on in politics today. And I could say some really cynical things, but you already think them, so we're done. Here's the question is, what happened to that program for adopting or where people were sponsors so they would not be a drag on the community?
Right, good. Denise, you're kind of the policy wonk here, so I'm going to lean on you to help talk through that. Many of us have been part of organizations that have hosted families that were coming here new, so can you talk about that?
Thank you for the question. Immigration is very complicated, and every administration has had different policies, so I'm not aware of what you're talking about, but what I can tell you is my dad came as a doctor from Bangladesh to Ohio, and it was the hospital who connected them with community and support. It wasn't the government, it was the community itself. And I know you and Zach can probably speak better about this, but refugee resettlement is the only way you come to this country and get something, which is cash assistance, health care, and that's it. You don't get a car, you don't get a credit card with no spending limit. I mean, there's so much misinformation about this. And I would love to hear from you guys exactly what you received when you came and how minimal time it was. It was less than a year that you get those benefits, so you're literally like dropped off into this new world to get a house, to get a car, to find a job. And it's churches and other communities that go to Lutheran Social Services or come to South Dakota Voices for Peace and say, how can we support these families? It is not the government who is thinking about that. It is local community members.
Other additions to that, Moses?
Yeah, I can share a little bit about my experiences. I came here with my mom and 4 brothers, and when we first came here, like Denise was saying, we only had cash assistance, maybe it was like $500 a month, and they paid for our apartment, and we had Medicaid, but at the time it was 8 months until my mom could get a job, or my older brother, who was 18 at the time, could get a job. But my mom, due to language barriers, she would not able to get a job until like 3 years later. But in the 8-month period, my brother got a job at Smithfield, and that's how we were able to support ourselves, and then eventually we were able to grow and get jobs and being able to work ourselves to self-sufficiency. But there's in the time right now, I serve as a board of director for LSS, and the time is now like limited to 3 months. So in 90 days, when refugees immigrants come here, or at least now it's you can come here as a refugee anymore, but the refugees that have been here, now it's limited to only 3 months. So in 3 months, you have to be able to get a job and be able to support themselves. So that's what I would like to say.
Thank you all. I begged Dave yesterday to give us more time, and we can talk all day. And it's a robust conversation. I'm just really grateful for all of you to take the time to be ready for this and to spend with our guests today. I just want to thank the panelists again with a round of applause. Dave, what closing remarks do you have?
Well, Michelle, on behalf of International Society of Newspaper Editors and South Dakota NewsMedia Association, thank you to the panelists for a very powerful, insightful conversation this morning. I think all of us in this room come away from here with lots of questions, ideas, but these are all conversation leaders within their own communities as editors and journalists who serve their communities. And so I'm sure they're going to take this back to their own communities in very positive and enlightening ways. So that, I think it's been a tremendous experience and very thankful. And I want to thank Michelle and Gretchen, would you stand as well, from Sioux Falls Thrive for helping us put this all together. It wouldn't have happened without them. Thank you, Gretchen and Michelle. It's been tremendous. It's been a great morning. Everything we expected and exceeded all our expectations. So thank you much. So listen, quickly, a couple of housekeeping duties for our audience. You're free to explore downtown for lunch this morning, or if you want to follow up with a personal conversation along the way out the door, feel free to do so. The buses will start. One bus will start to load at 1:15, and it's going to be located in a parking lot, which is basically behind the theater here. It's not out on the street where you disembark, but it's going to be in a parking lot behind the State Theater here, where you'll find the bus at 1:15. For departure, no later than 1:30, so keep that in mind. If you have questions, see me as you're on the way out the door. But also, there are some bags, compliments of Visit Sioux Falls in the hallway that have coupons and goodies for visiting some of the places downtown Sioux Falls, so make sure you grab a bag on your way out if you haven't already. And also, thank you to Allison from the State Theater here. Allison, thank you very much. What a wonderful all, enjoy, once again,